What's going on? Jake here with Uncommon EDC. Today we're taking a look at the Tekto A2 Badger, and this is a California compliant out the front automatic knife. And so being California compliant does mean that this is going to be a pretty small model, but they do offer full size out the front automatics as well if that's what you're looking for. Now this model is available in black, desert, and OD green for $139 over on the Tekto site, which I will link to in the description of this video. So mention that California compliant means it's going to be a small knife. Now in California, we're restricted to automatics with blade lengths under 2 inches overall, and they didn't really leave it up to interpretation either. Some out the front companies will do like 1.99 inches or 1.97 inches. They went with 1.8 inches, so no matter how you measure it, this one's going to be under 2 inches. And the handle is equally small because I didn't really need as much real estate here, 3.3 inches. And it's a comfortable handle, but that does mean that I'm getting a 3-finger grip. There's really no way to get my pinky on there. I can cramp up to do it, but as soon as I go to use it and spread out a little bit, my pinky falls right off the end of that. So you can put a lanyard if you want to prevent that or get a little bit more control over it. But I find with the blade this small, you really don't need the extra leverage that your pinky is going to offer anyway. You're not going to be doing those types of cuts here. And so this is comfortable. Your fingers lock in nicely. We have the finger groove for our index and that stepping on our switch that locks in the thumb really nicely. And so it does feel ultra secure even though I only get 3 fingers wrapped around it. Now overall length, we're looking at 5.26 inches, and combined with that aluminum handle means that we get a ultra lightweight knife as well at 2.18 ounces. So really weighs next to nothing, which is nice. As far as our pocket clip goes, I think a really strong point for this knife is the pocket clip. I like what they did a lot here. It's nice and stout, slides on pretty easily, and it is reversible for left-hand carry, which is nice. I also love how it's mounted. I like that more and more companies are doing this top mount where you can reverse it, and it doesn't leave that empty space on the side that you're not mounted on. So very ambidextrous without kind of taking anything away from the aesthetics. They did put the glass breaker on the end like most out the front autos, and in this case I actually don't mind it too much. I like how they did their glass breaker. It's not too pointy or sharp. You know, sometimes with them you reach into your pocket past the knife and you'll poke into that glass breaker and it can feel a little bit sharp. It's not going to cause any real damage, but can be a little bit annoying. Don't find that to be the case in this one, so it is well executed at least. Now, only thing I might change on this pocket clip is I'm not a huge fan of the billboarding, and so I would love to see it removed entirely. If you have to put a logo, I'd prefer the skull logo over the text logo, only because, well, one, aesthetically I just prefer the more sterile look, but more importantly, I think with an automatic, if someone Googles Tekto, they're most likely going to come across their automatic knives. That seems to be what they're more known for, although they do offer folding knives. And so I don't want something advertising that I have an automatic knife in my pocket. It's intimidating, even if it shouldn't be. It is intimidating to a lot of just normal non-knife people, and so I don't necessarily want to advertise that I'm carrying one around, and they don't know if it's a California compliant or not. Most people just know that they're illegal here, and so would love to see that either removed off the pocket clip, placed somewhere else, or removed entirely. But overall, kind of a small gripe. I do like how that pocket clip is executed. Nice stepping on both sides of that switch. You can see a little bit more aggressive on the retraction than the deployment, but either way, really effective. And the switch I do find to be really nice. It's pretty heavy tension-wise, so if you've ever handled a Microtech, they're known for those super heavy tension switches. I think they're kind of moving away from that in 2024, but all of their old models had a pretty heavy tension where, for my wife, for example, she couldn't deploy most of them without using 2 hands. And so a lot of companies are now doing much lighter switches, which has kind of forced Microtech's hand. And this one is still pretty heavy. My wife's able to deploy it with 1 hand, but it is heavy. I'd say it's pretty in line with like my Heretic model, and so pretty heavy still, probably heavier than most of my out the fronts. I don't have that many, I think 6 or so, but definitely on the heavier half than the lighter half. But I like that. It doesn't feel too bad. It doesn't fatigue my thumb too much, and it feels just about right. It feels really solid. you know, I do like the Kershaw Livewire made by Hogue. That one has a lighter switch and I like that too. But once you start getting too light, like I have a Cobra Tech made one that has a really light switch, it just kind of feels cheap. And so it does feel really nice. It also is super smooth, nice kick, no like audible ring when it closes up, which again with my Cobra Tech do get a little bit of a ring at the end where it's kind of reverberating inside of the handle. And so feels really solid in terms of, you know, comparing it to the cheaper models versus the more expensive offerings. I'd say this one feels more close to the more expensive offerings than it does to the cheap offerings, which is great because it's kind of in the middle price-wise. Now, when it comes to that price, we should talk about the blade. So we have a Tanto style blade. Not my favorite blade style, not my least favorite. I don't have a problem with it, and I think it makes sense on out the fronts and more tactical looking knives. It just kind of aesthetically makes sense, so I don't mind seeing that here. But we have D2 steel, and not CPM D2, just a regular D2. And at $140, that does feel a little bit on the high end of the price range. And so I would really like to see this come down a little bit, maybe 120. Now, again, with Cobra Tech, you can get D2 for a decent bit cheaper, but it does feel like a higher quality knife than that. And so don't mind paying a little bit of a premium, but it does feel like you're paying a decent premium on that D2 steel. And so either seeing it come down to say 119 or maybe seeing the steel move up to S35 yen, I might even be willing to pay 150 for something like that. And so just the price to steel that you're getting does feel just a little bit off, but not horribly so. You're still getting a really nice knife, and I think if you're gonna try out an OTF, maybe you don't know if it's for you and you wanted to try something cheaper than a Microtech or a Heretic, this is a really good option. I think more so than like a Cobra Tech or even like those knockoff or non-name brand ones that don't have any branding, because those don't really feel consistent with what you're gonna get. They fail a lot more often. The action's just a little bit janky and jumpy, and this feels really smooth, nice kick to it. And so I do think it's a kind of nice in-between option, but would like to see that price or that steel adjusted just a little bit there. Now, other than that, really solid, super smooth, like I said. And one thing that I did want to mention, so when they reached out, see if I want to check this out, you know, I've been a lot more picky about which brands I work with. I like working with brands that I've already worked with in the past, and I've seen Tekto, but I've never handled one. And so I checked out a couple reviews, and the main one that stuck with me was Lefty's. And he had an overall really solid impression, kind of similar takeaways in terms of that price point, but similar impression with just the quality of the knife. But he did mention that his came with a really dull edge, wasn't able to even cut paper. And so I did want to mention that. Usually I don't really test that stuff on camera. I'll test it out on my own, but not necessarily on camera. But I will say that this one came with a very nice edge. And so just have this index card here, really clean cuts across the board. No tearing or anything like that. So really nice edge on this one, whether it's an index card, 8.5 by 11, like printer paper, magazine paper, all cut really nicely. And so I don't know if that's something where maybe they saw his review and adjusted accordingly. Maybe that's just for review samples, or maybe they're all coming off the line and being sharpened a little bit better. It's also possible that one of us got a one-off, and so usually they're all dull, or usually they're all sharp, and I got the exception, or Kevin got the exception. But either way, I did want to mention that mine came really nice edge out of the box, better than some factory edges that I get. And so obviously you don't feel great about having to sharpen a knife right out of the box. It happens more often than we'd probably like. It definitely happens, but this one, it did come pretty sharp out of the box and has held that edge really nicely, so no complaints there either. Now, as far as this knife goes, I already mentioned, I think it's a really great like starter, try out and out the front and see if you want to spend those more premium prices. I also think it's a really solid, I just want one OTF in my collection and don't want to break the bank. I think this is a pretty good option overall. Now, in terms of things I might like to change, I already mentioned 2 of the 3, so in terms of the billboarding on the pocket clip, I'd honestly rather that be on the blade than the pocket clip, although I'd prefer it not at all, and just keep the minimal skull logo here on the blade. I don't think that looks bad at all. And so that's one of them. Already mentioned either upping the steel or lowering the price just a bit, just to get it more in line with what you might expect for D2, or offer a better steel for what you might expect at that price point. And then the last thing I'd say is that something that the big players like Tech and Microtech do really well is they take a model like this. So they have their A2, and they offer it with a bunch of different steels, a bunch of different finishes. You're gonna get a satin finish, a stone wash, they have their like apocalyptic finish, and so they offer different steels, different finishes, different blade shapes altogether. So one model might have 5 different blade shapes. They'll have a double edge, a drop point, or Tanto, and so they'll offer just a bunch of different options for the same model. And then even the same thing with the handle. This one we can get different colors, but no different patterns, no different materials or anything like that. So it would be cool to see them offer just the variety that some of those other companies are offering. But I think, you know, what they do offer, I like what they're doing. I think it's a pretty solid out the front auto overall, and really just kind of super minor complaints. So that's my thoughts on it. Would love to hear yours down in the comments below. As usual, if you enjoyed the video, consider liking, commenting, subscribing, and hitting the notification button. All help out the channel a ton. I do also offer a channel membership now. There's 2 member exclusive videos up now and more to come. We'll also be offering early access and stuff like that, but not taking anything away from our normal content. That is going to continue as it always has. And last but not least, do have a weekly live show with my co-host Tim over at Tim's School of Fish every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central. Definitely check that out if you can. I have a playlist on that if you'd like to check out previous episodes, or if you're just not able to make the live, definitely do so. But thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and have a great one. Take care.